Sophomore Rachel Beyda was up for a vote to be on the group's judicial council.
So my name is Rachel Beyda.
Despite her pre-law studies, her Jewish background came under fire.
So given that you are a Jewish student and very active in the Jewish community and still at SA5, and given that recently the Title 1 judicial board and the mess has been surrounding cases of conflict of interest, how do you see yourself being able to maintain an unbiased view as your position?
That's when Avinoam Baral, president of the group, interrupted.
The discussion was really discriminatory in nature. I had to step in and say my piece.
Baral says several members were questioning Beyda's judgment if she were to decide on a matter that dealt with Jewish students. A vote was taken and Beyda was denied the position.
What is going on college campuses? We expect our politicians to use their religious beliefs to direct them while they lead our country, but we should expect our judiciary to keep their religious beliefs out of the courtroom, especially when his or her religious beliefs do not reflect our own. It's a pleasure to welcome back legal analysts from the law offices of O'Brien and Ryan, LLP. Heather Hansen joins us from Philadelphia, also Alan Dershowitz sticking around. So this is a very troubling case, Professor Dershowitz, and also Heather. When you watch that video, Heather, what kind of emotions does it churn up in your gut?
It's just unbelievable to me that anyone is still engaging in this type of behavior. If something similar were to happen and the word had been your sexuality or your race would impact your ability to be fair, people would be up in arms. But the fact that for some reason, when it comes to being Jewish, these types of things continue to not only go on, but to be accepted is really, really troublesome and something that we need to look at more closely and report on more often so that people are aware that this is still going on.
Professor, again, I don't know this, I have no way of knowing this for a fact, but it seems to me that question that was asked was almost rehearsed.
Well, it could be. There is a very, very carefully calibrated attempt on college campuses today to delegitimate Jewish students, particularly those who show any support for Israel. But it starts at the very top. The former foreign minister of Norway publicly objected when President Obama appointed Ari Emanuel to be his chief of staff, saying the idea that there'd be a Jew in the Obama administration would clearly skew the Obama administration in favor of Israel. We see in Arab countries around the world they won't allow Steven Spielberg movies to be shown because he's Jewish. I've had my own experiences with that as well, where some universities students at universities try to ban me from speaking because of my religion and my Zionism. And so it's a very common problem, and you'd never, as you say, as the previous guest said, if there were a black nationalist who supported Malcolm X, nobody would ever imagine banning that person on campus, even though there are some pretty extreme views going on there. This is not exactly like what happened at the University of Oklahoma on the school bus with people screaming the N-word, but it's a more polite version of it. Essentially, it says no Jews allowed in student government because we have too much worry that if you're a Jew, you're going to favor certain outcomes of certain principles. Of course, Jews are as diverse as any other group. There are anti-Israel Jews, there are pro-Israel Jews, there are right-wing Jews, there are left-wing Jews, there are centrist Jews, and there are Jews that don't care.
Well, Heather, Professor Dershowitz is right, and part of me wants to ask this question. You talk to a lot of kids on college campuses today. They barely know who the vice president of this nation is, let alone know the intricacies of Israeli foreign policy. So this must be coming from some other place. And I want to know what is really behind, who is telling these kids, or where are they getting their information?
Well, I can tell you where they're getting it. They're getting it in the classroom. They're getting it from biased, bigoted professors who use the podium and the lectern of the classroom to indoctrinate them in anti-Israel and sometimes anti-Semitic views. The worst university in the country in that regard is Columbia University in New York. Berkeley is a close second. University of California at Davis. There are many university campuses where professors indoctrinate their students and grade their students down. I've seen examples of a PhD thesis that was rejected because it was perceived to be too pro-Israel.
Heather,
or not
Professor Dershowitz
anti-Israel
brings
enough.
up a good point. Do you think now that we're starting to talk about this, and he also mentioned there's been some really ugly incidents on the campus of Berkeley as well, specifically targeting Jewish students and pro-Israeli demonstrations. Do you think we're at a tipping point now where there might be some real political will to push back against this type of indoctrination?
Well, and there has to be that, and there has to be media pushback, because the courts are not taking care of this. The case that you talk about, that case at Berkeley, was brought up in the civil courts, and it was dismissed based on First Amendment charges because, you have the right to say what it is you want to say, even if it's ugly. And these types of cases have been brought up with under Title VI, and have, for the most part, been rejected. So if the court is not going to take care of this, we, the people, whether it be through the media or through just speaking about it, the recommendation here in this particular case with Rachel Beyda is to have more groups at the school, to have better education. Something has to be done, because I agree with the professor that this is something that is comparable to racism, and yet we don't want to talk about it that way. We don't accept that, and instead we pretend that it's some sort of liberal dogma and that it's okay, and it's just not.
Well, we know college campuses have been a safe haven, if you will, for free speech for as long as they've really been around. But do you think this really crosses that line, Professor Dershowitz, where the university and maybe even a higher level need to get involved and take a look at what's going on?
No, I don't like the university getting involved in things like this. They have shown an utter inability to protect freedom of speech. And I don't like the way Title VI is and other titles are used to compel universities to restrict free speech. I think the marketplace of ideas has to remain open. This story has a happy ending. Everybody condemned the students, just like everybody condemned the students at University of Oklahoma. I think the marketplace is a better place to have these things play out than some university administrators deciding what constitutes harassment, what constitutes freedom of speech, what doesn't constitute freedom of speech. If you look at the way some universities have disciplined students for saying things that were politically incorrect, I very much worry about authorizing university administrators to become censors and people who can constrain the First Amendment. So let the First Amendment remain viable on university campuses, particularly public university campuses, University of Oklahoma, Berkeley. They're public universities. The First Amendment operates in full force on those university campuses, and this kind of speech, even racist speech, is, whether you like it or not, protected speech. And we shouldn't let harassment laws or other kinds of vague rules constrain what students should say. It's a difference in the classroom.
All right, well, we'll have to leave it there, guys. We got to go. We're coming up against the hard break. But Professor Dershowitz, I wanted to thank you for your time, author of Terror Tunnels, the case for Israel's just war against Hamas, and Heather Hansen joining us from New York. Pleasure to talk to you both.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the video, we have a video of the case at UCLA. We also have video of that case that Professor Dershowitz talked about in Oklahoma. It was very disgusting racial slurs. I hope the marketplace will figure it out, because it'll be difficult, I believe, for those two to find a job down the road. More to come here on MidPoint. We're back right after this.